Hello, folks, and welcome back to our introductory series on iOS app development. In this little app, we've been building a ToDo app. We just finished doing some event handling, and now I want to move on to something a little bit bigger. In general, lots of iOS apps work with the MVC, or the Model View Controller pattern. In this little app, so far, we do have the three components, but I really want to make them more specific. We have our view controller, so that's our controller. We have our storyboard, so that's going to be our view. But right now, our model is a little bit weak. Our model is simply an array of strings. So what we're going to do in this video is build out the model a little bit to make it more sophisticated. The first thing I want to do is go up here to the navigator and I want to add some new groups. So I'm going to right click on ToDo and say new group. The first one I'll say is model. Then I'll go back on ToDo again, say new group, and we'll say view. And then we'll do one more. We're going to go to new group and we'll say controller. So then I'm going to drag and drop my storyboard into my view controller into my controller. And I'm going to rearrange these a little bit so that I have my MVC. And I'm going to close them up. So this really shows that I'm using an MVC type system. The only problem is we really have no model except for an array of strings. So let's make a little bit more of a sophisticated model. I'm going to do this in two steps. The first step is I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to make it a Swift file because it's not based on anything else. It's not a test class. It's not a Cocoa Touch. It's just a Swift file. I'm going to call it priority because I want to be able to give each of my to-dos a priority. I also want to make sure it's in the model group. So there we go. We have priority. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an enum. Enums are enumerations and they're a way of allowing someone to select one value from many. The name will be priority, and I'm going to put in 4 cases. We can either have a low priority, a normal priority, a high priority, or an urgent priority. Now, in general, enums have no external meaning. In other words, you can't send them out to the world and they would look right. So I want sometimes to show the priorities maybe in a label or a text box. So I want my priority in the outside world to be a string. So internally, an enum is for choosing between values. Externally, a priority is going to be a string. So the low priority will be the low string. The normal priority will be the normal string. The high priority will be the high string. And the urgent priority will be the urgent string. So now we have a little priority that we can use for setting up priorities internally, and we can send them out as text. So that's the first part of my model. The second part of my model is going to be a class. So let's go ahead here and do a new file. It's going to be another Swift file. And I'm going to call this just ToDo with the appropriate capitalization. Notice we have this foundation importation, and that imports all kinds of things that are common to Swift, like dates and numbers and so forth, which we might need to use. Okay, what is my class going to look like? It's going to be named ToDo, and it's going to be pretty simple. Our first thing will be a variable, so it can change, and I'm going to call it the title. And it'll be a string. The second thing will be a var as well, and it'll be the description, and it'll also be a string. The next thing will be interesting. It'll be a let, and it'll be the created date, and that'll be of type date. Date is something built into foundation. I'm also going, now why is it a let? Well, because hopefully the create date never changes, right? When you create something, you only create it once, so that date shouldn't change. We're then going to have a var for another date called the due date. And that date will be date exclamation mark. The exclamation mark means that it's possible to have an empty or nil due date. This means that the due date is optional. Again, an explanation when we're building something means this is an optional value, and we'll talk lots more about this as we go on. The last thing is var, the priority. And we're going to set that to priority. Now, if I leave my class like this, you'll notice I have an error. That's because I didn't give values to a lot of these things. The only thing that doesn't need a value is the due date because it's optional. Now, how do we typically give initial values to a class? We often use a constructor. So we're going to make a constructor, and the way you do that in Swift is the init keyword. So we're going to do init, and then I'm going to list each thing I have. So I have my title, and it's going to be string. I have my description, and it's also going to be string, but sometimes I won't have the description right away, especially when we do a quick to-do. So I'm going to give it a default value of just the empty string. I'm then going to do the priority. Priority, and it'll be of type, did I spell that right? No, I didn't, I knew it. Priority will be of type what? Priority, and we're gonna give it a dot normal to start its life. Notice I skipped two of them. I skipped the create date, and I skipped the due date. And I'll show you why. First, I'm going to make the title of the object equal to the title handed in. I'm going to make the description of the title equal to the description handed in. I'm going to make the created date of the class simply equal to the date constructor. The date constructor will always build a date of the correct date, or of today's date. I'm going to set the due date simply to nil because we don't have one. And finally, I'll set the priority to the priority given. And that looks like my class is all set up. So I now have a model with a title, a description, a created date, an optional due date, and a priority. I can initialize my to-do objects by specifying a string and by optionally specifying a description and a priority. And I get a default created date, and the due date is starting off life as nil. We have all kinds of other choices to make our class more sophisticated, and we will be doing that bit by bit, but for now, at least we have a model. We're going to extend the model a little bit in the next video, and then we're going to use the model in the video after that. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you in the next video. Happy coding!